Hi, I'm Robin Miller. This is an episode of Miller Chat. I am in my second episode of my 24th year. I have made it. I'll probably do one more year to 25 and then think about it next year. I've decided to do a new series, and it's called Sociology and You. See, I teach sociology at a college. I'm an adjunct. I've been teaching it for a couple of semesters, and I like what it says now in the modern era of the 21st century. When I took it in the 80s, it was about shut up, put up, whatever they talked about the isms, you just had to say, okay. Nobody ever talked about social justice or what the real meaning behind those isms. So now we're in the 21st century. I am so blessed that the isms are finally being spoken about and do something about. So before I continue, I also want to define what is sociology. Well, according to one sociologist, Howard Becker, sociology is a social science that uses scientific methods to study the social world, while the natural sciences study the physical or natural world. Furthermore, it's a study of people doing things together, because neither the individual or society exists without the other. For example, people can get together for a pickup basketball game across genders, across demographics, or jazz musicians just playing together in a club without even knowing each other. So how I define sociology in my class, it's about how the external forces, community, society, isms, as an example, affect us and how we interact with them. The question is, does it affect pets? Well, of course they do. Whether we have a term for the sociology of pets or a term with that, I don't know. We'll have to see. So today's topic is relevant to sociology, and it's about how it affects us. It's called Technology and Civil Rights. I'm going to be discussing in this first series about AI, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and how it can create racial bias algorithms in our society. From a sociological lens, because you say, well, what does this have to do with sociology? Well, sociology looks about how individuals, groups are affected by this external social force, AI, ChatGPT. But I ask you a deeper question. Is technology neutral? Think about that. Just a machine. What do they know? I don't mean to genderize it, but what does a machine know? The answer is sociology is not neutral, and I will discuss a little bit later. But first, I wanted to define what AI is. Well, what is ChatGPT? It's otherwise known as Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Now, I'm not a mathematician or a scientist, so I'm not going to be discussing the terms today based on the science, natural science, because that's not my background. So I found the term by howtogeek.com, www.howtogeek.com, about defining ChatGPT. And what is it? It's an AI chat box. And I will be using that changeably between ChatGPT, the chat box, AI models. That's how people define it in both sciences. That's created by Open AI. It is trained on a massive data set of text to generate human-like responses to prompts. ChatGPT was released in November of 2022. And for those who may have used it, they have those human-like responses, I guess, across all languages, I believe. I have never used it, but that's what I've heard. The co-founders that found ChatGPT wanted to have it as an open source, meaning that anybody can use it. They wanted to make it a nonprofit company in 2022 of November, but they decided, due to the big publicity and the big interest, as we all know, they decided to make it both a for-profit and nonprofit. There are concerns about using this AI model and how it can cause students to cheat in middle and high school, college, whatever anybody's taking a class. And according to the Chronicle of Higher Ed, what education, which a lot of higher ed professionals, faculty, staff read like I do, they talked about the concerns about cheating in the classroom and what motivates a student to cheat. Well, in an article that I found that sociologists contribute, they write articles that are peer-reviewed in academic rigor. It's called Conversation Online. It was published June 6th, 2023, and it's titled 3 Ways to Use ChatGPT to Help Students Learn. Professors Q.E. and Eric Anderman from Ohio State University wrote that if students learn to collaborate and focus on mastering the content as opposed to outperforming, outdoing, one-upping on each other, the need to cheat wouldn't happen. Instead, using ChatGPT as a learning partner can help students brain ideas to design. For example, they used them designing a hydroponic vegetable garden, and therefore analyzing the pros and cons of their design without having to earn a grade. I don't know. I guess you have to ask people in the education profession, what do they think about that? Is it just human nature to want to compete and cheat? I don't know. Let's read further. For me, I believe there's more research that has to be done in this area to state whether this concept is true or not, because I really don't know. Furthermore, the professors write 2 other points, such as that ChatGPT can boost a students' confidence by teaching them to break large tasks into smaller ones. And then the information that they find, they'll be asked to compare what they found in ChatGPT to other resources that hopefully they have used. I know for me, for my students, since I became aware of it in the spring of 2023, when I had them write about the sociological imagination, which is basically taking their personal issue and to see whether it's a societal problem that sociologists would be interested in, like unemployment or COVID, for example. I asked them to use ChatGPT, which was free at the time, to compare the information that they found and also use in a textbook. So students that answered that question, they found with ChatGPT, the information was very general and unemotional as compared to the information they used from a sociology book and other resources to help write their papers. So I guess it depends how you use it. And also the second reason they talked about, the second point, is that it could teach users on why their responses are incorrect. For example, if they're doing math problems, people are using it for science and math problems. So instead of giving them harsh feedback and saying, you're wrong, they show support in how they word it on the air to help them learn it better and not to alienate them from wanting to investigate further. So those are the 3 points they talked about ChatGPT: boosting students' confidence, helping them get information, analyzing the pros and cons, and then helping them with their responses to help answer in another way, but learning why they answered it wrong with support and understanding as opposed to alienating people. In healthcare, research is also tentatively showing that it could spot cancers better in x-rays before where they have not been able to do so. I don't know much about that. I don't know what population they're using, what demographic they're using. So there needs to be more information on what specific populations, demographic, as opposed to blanketly saying that research can spot cancer from the ChatGPT before an X-ray can. I don't know. Authors and artists are also using AI technology to enhance students' original works, such as drawings and paintings. Authors may ask ChatGPT for ideas and information in writing their books. So some people want to do that. I don't do it. Some publishing companies like Amazon does not support this. To me, it takes away creativity, but people are free to do what they want. So we talked about the advantages. Okay, I mean, yes, there may be not a lot of information on the pros, such as in healthcare or using it for art, for example. So what are the disadvantages of using ChatGPT? Harms can actually result from racial bias in the algorithms that are created. I will show a video, and it's titled, a short video of course, How to Eliminate Racial Bias in Artificial Intelligence. Everyday AI by Fortune magazine, that will be shown now during this show. It was shown on December 9th, 2022. So I just want you to see it, write your comments down, and then we'll come back after this.
as you're trying to create a AI that's less racially biased, one of the big questions is, what does it mean to be racially biased? What would it look like to be fair, and how can we close the gap between where we are and where we should be? AI systems are being deployed pretty much everywhere, and there's a lot of benefit to that. You're able to have more screening, you're able to query the system in a different way, you're able to have somewhat consistency of decision making, so there are benefits. However, if there is racial bias and people are not aware of it or looking for it, auditing their systems against that, what ends up happening is you are perpetuating bias unknowingly, and you're leading to these disparities among groups that might end up being a vicious cycle. Computer systems don't hate people, right? Computer systems just analyze data and spit something out. So when we think about what bias means, we need to think about how we quantify disparities between groups, how those disparities arise, and whether or not that's acceptable.
The data we use to train AI, to train machine learning models, needs to be about what should be and not what has been, right? Historical discrimination and systemic inequality will color the data. How do we make sure that when we are training our models, we are building towards a future that drives more equity and less bias? The first step to do is to make sure that the teams that's ideating, designing, and building AI is diverse, is inclusive, has diversity from all aspects, including race, gender, ethnicity, geographic background, cultural background. The more diverse your team, the more robust your AI model and the less likelihood of bias.
Really important to have people with these different perspectives in the room so they can see all of the challenges and create the technologies that will also expand the market, right? That'll help more people be able to engage and fully participate.
There is a myth that bias is created just by technology tools and needs to be addressed at the technology level. But the reality is it needs to be addressed at both levels, where the technology gets created, putting the guardrails in the technology as it's being created, but also at the use case level, the application level. Think about facial recognition. Facial recognition being biased in a law enforcement scenario, it's totally unacceptable. But facial recognition being used in the case of rescuing human trafficking victims or kidnapping victims, what's the level of bias that's acceptable? It's not a simple answer. AI can truly drive humanity to the next level and can make all human lives better. But only if we pay attention, we are mindful, thoughtful of why we are building the technology and putting those guardrails into the technology as we build it and as we use it.
There's been this increase in awareness, and you can see that companies are taking a more active role in trying to make sure their computer vision data sets are diversified. And I think that's really important. The ways in which these technologies are moving into an open source system where we're just going to see this explosion of new opportunities, new businesses, that I want us to always be thinking about the ethics and the societal implications as we adopt these new exciting technologies.
Welcome back. As you saw the video, there were some conclusions that the video has talked about, such as how the harms of biased AI, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, have discussed the failures to identify accurate facial recognition for persons of color that may result in people being arrested. And they've shown that. And Ashley is out there in the computer when you do internet searches too, a newscast about how people have been falsely arrested because the AI and machine learning can't do facial recognition as accurate and correct. And also they discussed about not having a diverse workforce to help create unbiased data sets for AI machine learning technology. So no longer will cause harm to the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQI, and people with disabilities. So the bottom line is that you have to diversify your workplace in creating equitable data sets before training the algorithms. Because right now a lot of algorithms are spitting out inaccurate information for BIPOC, LGBTQ, and people with disabilities for mortgages, housing, jobs. A lot of jobs now are using it to screen for age. Age discrimination comes from that because the AI, with the data set that was put in there, is trained to identify people that are just too old to be hired, which is another issue within itself. Now, what are the solutions? Well, other solutions is you can belong or know more about the Algorithm Justice League. Now, what is that? Well, it's an organization in Massachusetts that has the following mission statement: to raise public awareness about the impacts of AI, equip advocates with resources to bolster campaigns, build the voice and choice of the most impacted communities, and galvanize researchers, policymakers, and industry practitioners to prevent AI harms. They suggest 2 solutions to get involved. One is on their website. If you go on their website, give a testimony on how you were personally affected by racial bias, such as applying for a mortgage or getting falsely arrested. Or another option is to spread the movement on your social media with hashtags such as hashtag coded bias, hashtag equitable AI, hashtag accountable, hashtag inclusive AI, hashtag responsible AI, hashtag ethical AI, hashtag AL harms, hashtag machine bias, and so on and so on. Or hashtag Algorithmic Justice League on your social media pages, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. It's up to you to figure that out if that's something you want to pursue. I also read another book, and it's by Afua Bruce and her colleague. And it'll show, the book talked about, 1, diversifying your staff and creating equitable data sets before inserting them in the algorithms. And from the technologist at the table like this, you have technologists, policymakers, funders, people with the big bucks. You also need to include the groups who are impacted personally by it, not leaving them out. See, when I started this show 24 years ago, I was advocating for people with disabilities, social justice, because they weren't at the table with the funders, technologists, community leaders. They were left off the bus. So now it's a little better, where they are part of the conversation for transportation, housing. Things have gotten better in 24 years, but we still have a lot of work to do, and nobody expected the backlash against them in other states, and you know what they are. So it's important to bring the people to the table. For example, the book talks about when you donate equipment to a socially impacted group that serves people of color, immigrants, you want to make sure that the technology that you are donating is going to be usable, trainable, and practical. My experience in nonprofits over the years, people have gotten electronic equipment, but it served no use, or they were broken, or they were worthless. And the companies got this tax break called corporate welfare. So people out there need to understand that before you want to help people in need, it's important to work with the organization that serves them and to people with lived experience, because they're the ones who know how it feels. They're on the battlefield. You're not. You're only reading about it. So this book basically talks about, and before you do the technology, investigate the groups you want to help and involve them in it, not excluding them. You got to prioritize what you want to do based on what they want you to do. So something that's different in the 21st century is putting people at the table that are impacted, not off the table or off the bus, so to speak. So sociology looks at how external forces, such as AI technology, could cause harm to individuals from non-white backgrounds. And while sociologists may observe how these forces do interact with individuals, they can also educate people out there, for social justice by working together collectively, as well as researching what's, from sociologists' perspective, researching what sociological principles can help modify or eradicate these injustices. People in the 21st century, a lot of people of the dominant culture, we know who that is, have a lot of subconscious thinking about how things should be, how things can be, how people should look at events, major events, why it's okay for one group of dominant individuals to wear what they want at graduation as opposed to other people who dress it as they are because they're not white. So again, people have these subconscious mindsets that it's going to take a really long time to change, if they want to change. People don't understand how this can affect how they do business, how they treat students of color, how they want to include people in major decisions, major projects. So racism is here to stay. And that AI is an example of how we have racism based on these biased data sets by the dominant culture in America, for example, the whites, are putting these information in these algorithms for machine learning to make decisions for mortgages, for grants, I gather, or for healthcare. As the video showed, they showed mistaken AI, machine learning, making mistakes for people of color, not getting the care that they need or thinking otherwise. So we need to speak up and be mindful. And again, I'm speaking from a sociological perspective. I'm not speaking from a scientist, math, computer science. I invite them to come and do their own show. But my question to educators is this, and I asked my son, who's now going into high school, when they learned about AI, they only learned and asked to talk about the pros and cons. So I asked my son, I said, did they talk about racial bias? And he said, no. Maybe they did and he didn't pay attention. I don't remember the email that said that they did, but we need to teach our middle schoolers and high schoolers that the AI, if they're allowed to do it in class, if they need to compare data and all that, but they need to watch out for the racial biases as well as the other isms. And if the schools around the country, including our school district, doesn't address that, then we're going to be teaching students about AI, ChatGPT, as a perfect model, which is not. It's imperfect. So my challenge to all education systems is to talk about the pros and cons of ChatGPT, not just doing work for other people or answering their test questions, but also about the isms that they perpetrate. Because you've got to look about who are designing those algorithms and how students can be aware of that and to be an advocate to change that. So if you have any questions, you can email me at Miller_Robin, ROBBIN @yahoo.com. Thank you very much. And this has been an episode of Miller Chat, my first series on sociology and you. Topic today, technology and civil rights. Good night.